Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the next session of the Food Biotech Conference. I haven't seen you yet today. My name's Angela Tyrrell. I'm part of the LSX team, and I'm really pleased to be here with you today. We've got a fantastic panel lined up looking at building effective infrastructure and practices for successful partnering with FMCG, CPG, ingredients companies, plant-based foods, or retailers. Before I hand you over to your moderator today, just a reminder, please put all of your questions into the chat function. We'll make sure that the panelists see them and they can address them as we go. But in the meantime, I'm very, very pleased to hand over to your moderator, Shannon Theobald from Theobald Alternative Protein Consultancy. Shannon, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. I'm Shannon. Thank you, Angela, for the introduction. As she mentioned, I'm an alt protein consultant. I have extensive experience in market expansion, competitive positioning, and logistics optimization. I'm the author of Printing Your Dinner, and I host the podcast Big Food, Big Future. I consult with orgs interested in investing in alternative protein and advise early stage startups. So really pleased to be able to bring those two worlds together in this panel today. So to start out, I'd love to just hear, panelists, what key questions are you most interested in at the moment and why? And give a little bit of an introduction along with that. So I'll just go in the order of my screen and pass it off to Tim first.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. And firstly, look, thanks for inviting me to this session. I'm really pleased to be amongst such a team here. So yeah, I'm Tim Ingmire. I lead the research, development and quality team here at Quorn Foods, and I've been in the company 14 months. So anybody who wants to check out anything else, please look me up on LinkedIn, connect if you wish to do so. So the question, what are we looking for? We're looking for everything, really, right? But if I, that's probably a bit too generic for everybody. If I bring this back to our ambition and what we're trying to do, we want to be net positive by 2030. And by 2030, you're selling 8 billion servings a year. So note the lack of a financial target there. So what does that mean? Well, anything that we can find there, or technology that can help us do that, whether it's around driving product performance, right? So taste, texture is on everybody's mind. How do we do that with a great nutritional benefit, minimum impact to the to the environment? Solutions that help us deliver that and challenge our thinking, challenge our way of doing business. I think we're really, really very much interested in. And whilst that may be an ingredient, it may also be some nice tech that helps us monitor our fermenters. We're one of the only companies that are fermenting our protein at such a scale. So the efficiency of those fermenters, making sure again that we're reducing our carbon footprint, is really, really important to us. But obviously understanding consumers, right? We're in very much a new category here. Most of us, I think, have backgrounds in mature markets. So understanding consumer behavior, the shifting landscape, how we understand that and translate that into something tangible, which they will then go and buy again and again, I think is really very critical. In terms of some very specific things, look, we have a history of selling fantastic vegetarian products. And we want to have a future of selling fantastic vegan products. We already have a number of them, but one of the challenges that we have is how do we replace some of our vegetarian binders? And so we're using egg white at the moment. How can we replace that with something which is vegan? Currently, we're using potato protein. We like to look for other solutions as well. That would be great for us. But again, it's all about driving a great textured experience in line with what the consumer wants. So anything that helps support us with that is super. We've also got a stated challenge, which we've announced before, which is how do we create protein from lignocellulose? So again, a very, very different way of producing, essentially from waste material, which is commonly available. And can we stretch that further? Can we create protein from CO2 or rather our mycoprotein from CO2? Because I know that other people are creating protein as well. So in very quick nutshell, broadly, that's what we're looking for, but very specifically, some of the things that are on my agenda right now are what we've just talked through there.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. I feel like I have 10 questions for you already. And I'll pass to Amir next from the startup perspective.
Thank you very much, Shannon, and thank you for having me in this panel. just a couple of words of background. So I'm with the Kitchen Hub, which is owned by Strauss Group. I'm based in Israel. And the Kitchen Hub is a hub for startups. We're a seed investor and the company is builder. So we go into startups at the very, very early stages, and we provide the seed investment to those startups. And then we work with those entrepreneurs and innovative teams for a period of about 24 months on all of the areas that they have to make progress on, from technology all the way to commercialization. And trying to help them reach market and, of course, meet follow-on investors, et cetera, et cetera. So we consider ourselves sort of companies builders. Of course, we are only interested in food tech. And when you're asking me what we're looking for and what is, next for us, well, we're always looking for the next big thing. So my best example is when in 2016, we've created Aleph Farms, which is one of the leading companies in cultivated meat. That was, the cutting edge, state-of-the-art thing back then in 2016. So we're constantly looking for what's next, what's big, what's going to happen, both on the side of ingredients. And by the way, I think the most important or most interesting ones at this point are probably, fungi, algae, yeast, and those microorganisms that Tim is smiling, of course. That's his territory. But I think we've only barely scratched the surface on what can be done with those microorganisms and their ability to generate their natural proteins, as well as being engineered and produce other kind of protein. So I think this is a very big thing that we are at least very interested in pursuing and supporting. Other areas that are everything that has to do with the environment, from compostable packages to reduction of food waste and greenhouse gases. All of those are the top ones on our list. That's the brief introduction.
Yes, amazing. I couldn't agree more that fungi and fermentation are such exciting areas right now. And I think has some great synergy with what others here are looking for as well. So interested to see how you've best found that your startups can partner with large organizations. And with that, I'll pass it to Carolyn, who I know is working on some of these things herself.
Hi everyone, super happy to be here today. So I'm working for Bell. So Bell is a French company, family-owned company, producing and selling famous brands such as the Laufinco, Kiri, Mini Baby Bell, so cheese mainly. More recently, we've launched our first plant-based brand, so Nourish, which is a plant-based cheese brand. And I was lucky enough to create 2.5 years ago a plant-based acceleration unit. So that's why I'm here today. And on top of being in charge of the strategy, I'm in charge of sourcing and helping the development and accelerating promising solutions in a protein, alternative protein sector. So I'm trying to source any alternative solutions. So coming back to your questions, and I'm going to focus on my part, which is alternative cheeses. What you have to understand is when we've created that acceleration unit 2.5 years ago, we realized that at that time, plant-based was the only beginning, meaning that potentially very quickly we could see something different happening on the market, different from plant-based. Or the plant-based we were able to do 2.5 years ago will be completely different 2.5 years later. So we decided to be strongly connected with the food tech in order to identify what would be our bets. And this is your question, what I am looking for. And we decided to focus on 3 different areas. The first one is what we call internally the plant-based cheese plus plus. For those who know plant-based cheese, honestly, the market is small because it's really hard to find tasty products with the right functionalities, with the right price, with a good level of nutrition, and with a short ingredient list. Honestly, it does not exist yet. It's a big headache for anyone. So I'm discussing with several startups working on different ingredients in order to see if some of them are able to match, maybe not all boxes, but some of them. So this is my first bet, how to improve what is already on the market toward more sustainability and affordability and nutrition. The second one, and we spoke about that already with the panelists, is biomass. Definitely, I think that fermentation of microorganisms can be a game changer, meaning that we can offset some of nuts that we could have with plant-based while having a very good nutrition. So this is the second topic on which we are spending quite a lot of time. And the third one is precision fermentation. So completely different, not plant-based at all, meaning how to be able to put dairy products on the market without having touching any cow. So this is the three topics on where I'm spending time.
Amazing. Well, I'm so excited about that and about Belle's future there. Katherine, what about you? What are you most interested in?
Okay, so maybe first a little bit of background. So my name is Katherine Mace. I've been recently appointed startup program manager at Nestle Research in Switzerland. And my mission is quite simple, is to scout and identify startups and most importantly, to establish partnership with these startups and our R&D accelerator or with one of our research units. And really, the idea is to bring future food innovation, but also to contribute to fulfilling our environmental commitments that we have. Obviously, at Nestle, we have a rich history of internal innovation, but clearly good and innovative ideas sorry, can come from everywhere. And it is why we have a strong open innovation activity to get new opportunities and further boost our innovation. In terms of interest, it's super broad. We have interest in a lot of, I would say, verticals in terms of startup, whatever is consumer trend-based. It can be personalized nutrition, convenience, microbiome for health, but also sustainability, plant-based, obviously, but also upcycled foods, low CO2 ingredients, and then packaging, also sustainable packaging is of importance for us. And finally, affordable, to be able to source local raw materials with minimal waste. This is the type of things that we are interested in. And it's not only in food tech, but also in agri-tech, because we need to support the transition to a regenerative food system. So everything around regenerative agriculture, precision agriculture, and obviously animal greenhouse gas emission is of interest. So sorry, super broad. And in terms of things more specific, and if we talk, because we talk a lot about plant-based, and it's, of course, plant-based product is a strong interest for Nestle, and all potential differentiating ingredients or technology for improving taste, texture, color, whatever, it's of interest, and it can be in meat, dairy, fish, seafood, and meat analogs. We are interested in all these type of analogs. Obviously, a key component is it's clean labels. The ingredients have to be clean labels because the consumer is really demanding on that. And yes, this is more or less, and again, sorry, it's super broad.
Well, I mean, for such a large company, of course, you have many things you're interested in. So I'm glad to hear you're working on all of them. And finally, Karl, let's hear from you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So Karl Williams, I'm the technical director for Meatless Farm. So within my remit, I look after the food safety aspect, but also the R&D, MPD and environmental sections of the business. And I think for me, and definitely for Meatless Farm, if I go back to the reason why the business was created in the first place, it was not about turning everybody vegan in the plant-based market. It was not about turning everybody vegetarian, but it was getting people to reduce. And part of that reason was because there isn't enough food longer term to sustain everybody. So it was about reduction in meat and moving people over to plant-based. And I think very much like everybody, and specifically Tim, our focus is on great tasting food. So taste and texture is really important in this space. And it plays a really key part to getting people to transition into plant-based products. Ingredients within that, which is partly why we developed and built our own site in Canada that makes our TVP and creates our base material, because then we can drive better efficiency, but also ingredient management into that. But also coupled with that, the health benefits and the environmental impact as well. So our state at the moment is looking at our products and being able to develop more that hit taste, texture, sustainability and health for customers. And I think certainly for me, over the last 18 months, definitely, but probably slightly more the next 24 months, the market has shifted in this space significantly. No longer is it a space where it's just eaten by vegans and vegetarians. It's eaten by flexitarians and everybody else in between, because they want a varied diet. And I think everybody has now seen that. For me, there has been three key metrics that have come out. It's been a great tasting product, a healthy product, and one that satisfies the environment and supports the environment in that way. So I think it's really crucial that the ingredient development continues, whether it's about the base material itself, cleaner, fresher, healthier from that perspective, or whether it's, as many people have mentioned, clean label, looking at binders and emulsifiers and how we create better products going forward over the next 12 months.
Amazing. Thank you, Karl, and thank you all for sharing. I am so excited to dive in. So my first question is, you all come from such amazing organizations. Why partner? What are you looking for from a partner that will differentiate them? Or conversely, what are you hoping to provide a partner from the perspective of a startup? What do you bring to the table? And this is the Wild West now, so anyone who has something to say, hop on in.
I can take it if you want. So for us, what we propose is really to bring our R&D expertise, not only but regulatory, legal, whatever we can bring to the startup to move on. And it's why we have created this accelerator not a long time ago, but it's really to provide to the startup in 6 months a program where they can come from an idea and they can go up to a shop test. So we provide to them access to a market and access also to again our expertise, R&D and business expertise in different product categories. It can be confectionery, dairy, ice cream, whatever, or even pet care also, because we have startups for pet applications. And at the accelerator, we give them an infrastructure with prototyping and kitchen, creative kitchen facilities, even bench scales facility, and mini production. We can do aseptic filling, for instance. So this is something that helps and can speed up obviously the development of the products done by the startup. And we do that with a dedicated team. So the startups can come during the 6 months, or if they cannot, they come whenever it's possible for them. And we provide also a little bit cash money to that they can, I will say, survive in Switzerland. The life is a little bit expensive. But what is really important is that they will have a lot of in-kind support, and all the developments will be taken in charge by Nestle. So I really think that's the plus, the added value that we can bring is, again, these facilities and the access to a lot of expertise.
Maybe I can jump in and give the mirror perspective to what Katherine said, which basically sounds about the same, around the same issues, but I think it's important to realize that the basics of a startup, at least in the regular tech world, investors will tell the entrepreneurs, don't engage with the giants too early. Build yourself up, gain some traction, come to the table when you're stronger. But this is much easier when you're a software company, rather than when you're trying to develop a food product or a novel food ingredient. Because if you're a software company, then you don't have a supply chain, you don't have regulation, you don't have all the stuff that makes the food industry so much more complicated than maybe other industries. So in the case of food and food tech startups, and I'm talking about both ingredients and products, I think this kind of basic common knowledge of startups, don't engage with the giants too early, does not apply. And we are pushing our startups to start engaging with companies like Caroline's and Katherine's as soon as possible, because in our space, the value that can be achieved by partnering is much greater than the risk of coming too weak and having the giant walk all over you and all that stuff. And if you do it right, my point of view, then those partnerships are great value creation for both the corporate and the startup company.
Maybe I can jump. Thanks, Amir, and I fully agree in line with you. Maybe I can give you a little bit more insight. When I decided to create that acceleration unit at Bell, I had plenty of choice. We've considered setting up an accelerator, for instance. We've considered setting up a CVC as well. And finally, we decided not to do both of these directions. And we decided to put a small team spending time to find the right partner, meaning that at the end of the day, I will select few startups, probably 2 to 3, not more, because at the end of the day, we want to set up strategic partnership. And for me, a strategic partnership means putting enough means on the table to make a win-win partnership. It's a little bit like a marriage. We need to win together, and if in the partnership, if there is only one winner, it does not work. So I'm currently screening the market to come up with that selection, because at the end of the day, on top of the equity part we can take, for me, it's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is how to be able together to be successful. And it means, as Katherine said, having access to facilities, to lab scales, to pilots, to our teams, to our resources, regulation, or whatever. But we cannot split ourselves for 20 startups. At least at Bell, it does not work. So that's why I decided to focus on 2 to 3, not more, in order to be sure to deliver the right level of support tomorrow, because we want to win together. So this is how we decided to proceed at Bell.
Wonderful. I love that idea of winning together. And I think that that is really critical to a successful partnership, is that each party truly feels like they're winning, like this is helping their overall growth. And Amir, I thought that was such an interesting point, that startups are generally advised not to engage with the big guys, so to speak, too early on. And that's something that I've often heard advised as well. So that actually ties in really nicely with the question we got from the audience from Katya Riddell. I hope I'm saying your name right. And she asked, so how innovative can partners be? Is there a limit, so to speak? Obviously, you all have key areas that you're looking to partner in, but Katya specifically mentions bioactives and that require approval, or fermentations with novel combinations of microorganisms. I think what the question really gets at, that I'd love to hear about, is are large corporations, large companies just looking for solutions, or are you looking for true innovation? And I believe that that is the reason that startups are often advised not to partner too early on, is to protect that creativity and ingenuity. So would love to hear you speak a bit on that. And then Amir, also really interested in your perspective on how can smaller organizations protect that creativity when in partnership with a large organization?
Yeah, so should I have a go? I think answering your first question, Shannon. I think, you know, in order to answer the question from Katya and also from Jordan here as well, right, in terms of what's been the biggest challenge, and you know, I realize we're not a huge conglomerate organization when I'm speaking on in this, but in terms of exactly that. Thank you. I mean, we're not huge, but watch this space. So how innovative can we be? It depends, right? So as I've said, there are some challenges that I've already articulated where I need a solution today, right? So if I have to go through a multi-year approval process, that's probably not going to work, right? But there are other parts of our ambition where we can be more patient. We can look to develop something over 3, 4, maybe even 5 years. And given the history, if you think about the history of Quorn Foods, right, it's come actually from a fairly major partnership between two conglomerates, right? So, you know, Lord Arthur Ranks, RHM, and ICI, taking many, many years to develop that. So that kind of thinking is actually part of our DNA, right? So how do you do large scale innovation over a large period of time, really patient, really resilient? So for us, for the right kind of challenge, we can be very innovative, and we've got that experience of going through, you know, these quite tortuous approval processes, you know, for novel foods. But that's not going to be applicable to everything, right? So it's about getting that balance right of that whole program. And to Caroline's point, you know, making sure that you're very focused where you can be, because one of the challenges is, especially with more closer in challenges and ideas, there's going to be more people with exactly those kinds of tools and solutions for you. So one of the challenges that we found is you can be inundated with people in a very small space. So sometimes actually just screening through that massive possibilities is actually one of the bigger challenges. If you're not careful, you know, you really can be overwhelmed with that, and that's something we are always trying to guard against that. And that's true for me in my current role. It's also true for me in my previous role in another company, you know, where we're looking for solutions around salt reduction as an example, right? So getting that balance right, I think, is really critical. In terms of in terms of Katya's, it really does depend. You know, sometimes we're looking for a very specific solution. When we're more in the opportunity scoping space, then I think, you know, and where we are deliberately much more long term, then I mean, the world's, you know, anything's possible, right? So, but does it make sense? Is it relevant? Do we really feel there's you know, a real feasibility behind that?
I think it's Karl's turn.
Well, I was just about to jump in because I echo what Tim has said, actually, because I think it's twofold. I think it's where you are looking for a solution for the here and now, And I think it's that solution that you're trying to find, and then which may be over a 6 to 12 to 18 month process. And I think then there's the further out realization that you want to look at real, you know, cutting edge innovation that might be about using waste products or waste streams for base materials or those sorts of things, which might take you 2, 3, 4 years to actually develop. So I think it's both, it's twofold. It depends what the business is after. And we certainly look at both in different ways, depending on what our need state is now, but also then what it will become as the business grows. And I think the other side of it is around, I think Tim's right, you can be inundated with lots and lots of requests from entrepreneurs that are looking at ingredients, and we get requests on a steady stream every single week about looking at different raw materials and how they may impact and work within our products and our finished products. And you have to sift out the ones that are real and that you can actually do something with, and you don't have to go through. We all know how complicated food legislation can be, particularly when you're building and operating a business across several different continents, whether it's just the UK, whether it's Europe, or further afield. And it's about then trying to wheedle those down into the real key ones that actually make a difference to you as a business, but also to the finished product. Because I think sometimes we forget the finished product and the actual activity that happens within that ingredient or within that particular piece of innovation and technology, that how it impacts that finished product. Because at the end of the day, we all know that all our customers do not buy an ingredient or an innovation, they buy a finished product. And I think that's the real key thing to remember. Because that's what we're actually trying to achieve. And if we achieve a product that is great, tastes great, mimics meat, whatever it might be, that's when we get the consumer dynamic to change. And that's where it affects the environmental impact.
Fully agree with you, Karl, and that's why is what I wanted to say. I'm not sure that we have to put into balance a solution or a breakthrough innovation. We are looking for solutions, and whatever the category where we are playing, I'm looking for a cheese with a good level of nutrition, short ingredient list, super taste, super texture, and so on. So, and then how to come up to that cheese. If it is through a breakthrough innovation, great. But if it is with a simple ingredient, even better. So my point is how to put the best product on the market, whatever the solutions. And I'm quite convinced that at the end of the day, it will be a mix of different solutions. So I will phrase it in that way.
So maybe 3 things, Shannon, to answer this point. First of all, I found a little bit strange to think about if you partner with a big corporate, you are going to lose your creativity, because I believe it's going to maybe to push your creativity and open doors. And by the way, I wanted to say that in our accelerator, it's open to startups, of course, but it's also open to employees coming with their own ideas. And I can tell you our employees are creative. And also to students. So all these people are in the same facility, and I can tell you it can only push the creativity. And finally, compared to the solution, short solution and the long-term solution, it's why when I meet a startup, I see if, okay, it can go in the accelerator, because in 6 months we can test the product proposition, we can further develop the products and then put it on the market to see if it's gets some tractions. But if it's longer term, because the technology is not ready or because regulatory wise it's not yet approved, I'm going to connect the startup with one of our research units. It can be the Health Science Institute that we have, or Packaging Institute, or Material Science, where we have all the food technologists developing plant-based products, for instance. So I have the opportunity to jungle between I will say shorter term and longer term, because we have to look at both sides.
So I have a few comments on everything that everybody said. And of course, the most important thing is taste. We're all of us, at the end of the day, we're selling food, right? So it can be the cleanest, most sustainable environmental product. If it doesn't taste good, nobody's going to buy it. I mean, some startups learn this the hard way because they say, hey, it's good, it's clean, it's environmental, someone will buy it. No, they will not buy it because it's environmental. It has to be tasty. So if you're out there and you're a startup and you're making something, make sure that if it is a food product or even an ingredient, it is tasty. So just to echo on that. Now, with regards to what Tim said about long-term versus short-term, I think that probably the best collaborations with a startup might be on the long-term, right? While the corporate is engaged with the day-to-day and it has to meet up to the expectations and the revenues and it has to boost sales and everything. It's different for a startup. Startup is working on capital that was injected to it by long-term investors that are looking for a big thing at the end of the day, not small sales, immediately, but huge sales at the long term. And this is what they should be working on. And I think for corporates, putting something on a back burner, let's cooperate with the startups. They're going to work. We're going to monitor. We're going to provide the help, and the guidance and everything that we need for this to work for us. And let's see how this is happening. This is a very good partnership in my point of view. And again, with each and every one, it depends on the priorities, but sometimes these are the best connections. I wanted to touch on the point of creativity. Was that or ingenuity or innovation? I've never heard a concern about that. I mean, the startup is going to continue to be the startup. It's going to work. It's going to collaborate with the corporate or with the food company. But I've never heard a concern about losing, the spirit of the startup company, unless of course, it is being acquired, and then many different things can happen. But if you collaborate, you bring the agility and the hectic way of doing things, and the corporate would typically put you in place. So there's procedures, you have to go through the steps, there's regulation. Let's go through the steps that are crucial for us in order to bring something that has quality to the market. But typically the concern is about IP and maintaining your proprietary technology. And there are ways to protect IP, not necessarily writing a patent, but what I wanted to say that at the bottom line, there has to be trust, right? And having a perspective of 22 different startups working in the kitchen in different stages and on different types of products, we have different types of entrepreneurs, and some of them were extremely protective of their technology, and they wouldn't tell anybody anything, and they wanted to do anything by themselves. And I have to say, they're a little bit lagging behind. The other side, we had, entrepreneurs, managers of startup companies that said, we trust these guys. I don't believe that anybody that's on this is here talking to me in order to kind of steal my technology or learn my ideas and take. I think it's if anybody would do that in this day and age where the rumors travel so fast, nobody, if a corporate will do that, that would be the end of its open innovation / accelerated program with startups. Everybody's going to know about that. So I think trust is crucial. I think once you trust your partner, then you can fly together a success, and the way that Caroline described it at the beginning. So I'm not saying trust anyone, build a trust relationship, but then if you're able to do that, it's a win-win, and startups are gaining as much as the corporates with those partnerships.
Absolutely. Yeah. Relationship is really the key there, right? It's at the end of the day is about maintaining that for both parties. So that leads to my next question. As you're sifting through potential partners, what indicates that there could be a strong relationship? What indicates that this is a good partnership to pursue? And maybe let's start with Katherine, since you have experience in an, shall we say, incubation environment. And then I'd love to move around to others who are looking for partners for their own products.
Yeah, for me, it's, and to continue to what Amir said, a successful partnership, we need to have a clear objective of the partnership. What do we want to achieve together? And also to identify the win-win deal that both sides will benefit of this partnership. So, and for us, of course, the partnership is going to be successful. Or at least we will identify the startup according to our priorities of what we are looking for, but also on the team, the mindset of the team. Are they in agreement with our values? Do they want to also do they have the same vision than us? And do they have the collaborative mindset that will be important to have during this partnership? Trust and transparency is key. If there is no trust and no transparent communication, of course, it's not going to fly. It's going to be very painful. And yes, and to have complementary skills. What can we bring to the startup? What they can bring? So these are the key, for me, the key components for a successful partnership.
Fully agree, definitely, on what has been said. The winning partnership is really key. And as I said previously, for me, the only question is the fit between both companies, between the startup and the corporate. And I spend a tremendous time to try to understand if we have a good fit, because at the end of the day, we need to move together. And especially in my domain, where startups are really early stage. So, you know, before anything else, I have no BP, I have nothing. Even the technology is really hard to assess internally because it's far from what we used to do. Is it a question of fit? It's a question of complementarity. It's a question of how we will mutually benefit from each other in order to be successful together. So for me, it's the key topic on the winning collaboration. And coming back to what Amir has said previously, I think that trust is key and we have to do compromise. We cannot, stay exactly on the same direction when you are alone. When you are together, when you are married, you have to do compromise. So we need to renounce a little bit to be bold together. And I think that corporates have understood that honestly, and they are accepted to renounce to some topics. And startups have to do the same, meaning that sometimes I have the feeling that money and valuation is above anything else. And it's true that money is key, definitely. But sometimes I think it's better to think in terms of choosing the right partner. Of course, if you can have both super high valuation and the right partner is super, but think in terms of finding the right partner, because it will be a way to win tomorrow and then to have the highest valuation. I think at least this is the way I'm trying to think with the startups I'm discussing.
Yeah, if I might just build on that, I really like the analogy with like being in a civil or partnership with somebody else. The parallels are exactly the same, right? So, for me, the fact that you're going to be trying to work with somebody assumes that you think they can solve your problem in the first off, right? So that's the kind of hygiene fact you want to make sure that's correct. Once you know that, or you're confident they can get, together you can get there, it's got to come back to, do the values of that organization match the values of your organization? That's really critical. Within Quorn, we've been spending a lot of time developing the values over the last couple of years of this organization. Actually, what you see right behind me is some reflection on those values. And so, for us, we need to be making sure that the company we want to work with is aligned to that. Because if that's not aligned, again, it's just like any other relationship you have in life. If that's not aligned, fundamentally, it's not going to work. Ultimately, this is all about human interaction. Right. So there is the points around, the very first meetings you have, it's like a date. It really is like a date. Is there a chemical connection between you? It is often called a chemistry meeting. right? Put the solution to one side. Can we as individuals get along together? And then can we as companies get along together? If the answer to those is no, even if you have the solution, it's going to make the rest of that relationship, especially if it's going to be a long-term relationship, extremely, extremely difficult. And the final point I want to make is, and I don't mean to offend any lawyers in the room, but if the lawyers are too strong in the argument, that can be a real challenge. So too many times over many years of trying to work with other companies, when just getting that basic agreement in place, who owns IP, right? Who owns what background and foreground IP? That is it can be so problematic, and it really doesn't need to be. So I think getting the role of the legal attorneys in the right place to be supportive but not dominating, I think is incredibly important.
Absolutely. Great point, Tim. Yeah, you make me think, when thinking about challenges, what would you all say have been the most difficult challenges you faced in previous partnerships, and how did you surmount them?
But before we go to that, can I
please.
add something to the previous question? I wanted to touch on things that both Tim said and Caroline said. With regards, to money and valuations, etc., I think it's a totally different thing. So there has to be a synergy, right? There has to be a basic for a business collaboration between the startup and the corporate or the food company, however we want to call that. And this is separate from investing in a startup, which has to make sense on a whole other level. So I think a good partnership would be, okay, we have a good partnership because we have good chemistry, as you mentioned, and we have common goals. And if we work together, it's a win-win situation for both of us, and we bring a great product to the market and both of us win. That's one thing. The other thing is, okay, what about money? And I think it's a different story that has to be dealt with in a different way, and probably with different people. The ones that are actually in charge of, equity investments, long-term investments. For the startup, some startups come to the table and they need more money. I can understand that. But in most cases, I think you need to let the investors do investments, and product teams do products and create the magic of synergy. And if a startup can bring money from financial investors, not being dependent on the corporates to provide the capital, and then come to the table clean because there is synergy, not because it's looking for a capital investment and all that stuff, that makes things so much easier. Because again, for a startup, having corporate partners on his cap table, in one sense, brings a vote of confidence. In another sense, it's making things much more complicated. And this brings me to Tim's comment on IP, etc. One thing all of us have to remember, that typically, specifically an early stage startup that is just starting to find his way into the market, for him, this is the silver bullet. If he misses this opportunity, if this doesn't come through, then he's in a big, big trouble. It's not one of 10 projects that is going to be dropped, as devastating as that can be, or as terrible as that can be. For the startup, that might be the end. He's not going to meet certain milestones. The investors are not going to invest any more money, and that's going to be the end. And startups, for that reason, they're hysterical. They're scared shitless. So excuse my language. And they want to protect their IP. They want to limit the exclusivity that corporate can get. So both parties have to understand where the other one is coming from. Because if this is successful, fantastic. If this is a bestseller, let's give you the exclusivity for all the world and let's make money together. But if not, then things are looking quite differently. And let's all remember that as well. So just the comments on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that point about the fear that founders might face. That makes absolute sense, right? Like, this is your thing, your lifeblood. Of course you would feel really emotional about it. And that brings me back to my last question or my previous question rather. how do you mitigate those challenges, right? How do you engage in this relationship as a relationship and speak to founders, speak to partners as a human, right? So when we're thinking about this fear, or when we're thinking about excitement as well, what are the most important factors to maintaining this marriage?
I think for me, I definitely, from partnerships that I've been involved with over my career, it's ultimately the biggest challenge is what each person's getting out of it. And I think everybody sort of sits there and looks at that partnership. And Amir makes some really good points about startups and about the money side of things. And I think a lot of the time that's where a startup will come from, and that's where particularly from an ingredient perspective or a new technology, a novel technology. But I think the challenge for me is making sure that you're both getting out of that partnership what you both want, whether it's the big corporation getting there, first to market, quick win, whatever it ends up being, or whether it's the startup getting their IP recognized and get more avenues into more sales, into more expansion, those sorts of things. And I think the groundwork that everybody's talked about, so Caroline's talked about it, and Katherine as well, about the groundwork that you do with a prospective partnership. What you're looking for is really those synergies. Are the values matching? Do you both understand each other's points? Is there compromise within the agreement? Are you both talking the same language? And actually then, is there just that connection? Have you got this connection with that individual? Are they open, honesty? And I'll always look for open honesty, a real sharing and a real collaboration of ideas that really start the conversation, because I think that's where the excitement happens and that's where the magic happens for me. It might not necessarily be about the thing that the partnership has brought. It's sometimes the magic, and it's sometimes the bits that happen behind the actual innovation or behind the new ingredient, and how you talk and how you respond and where you move to. And it's quite often something new, something different that comes from that partnership. And I think that's what's really important.
Wonderful point, Karl. Thank you.
I'll just reiterate what you just said. Yeah, sorry, because nobody else was jumping in.
Don't
So
be sorry.
took the
I love
opportunity,
your
being a rude Israeli. So just to reiterate, I think that coming to the table, understanding or trying to understand the other side point of view, that's the key element. If a startup understand what the corporate is looking for and what will be a success for him on one side, and if the corporate understand why the startup is so scared and hysterical and what would be a success for him, I think that's the key to overcoming and bridging those gaps and creating successful partnership.
Just to add on your point, it's true that some startups can be a little bit scared, and they always consider the corporate as a big fish that will swallow the small fish. But what they have to understand is, if we're spending that time to look at the external world, is because we don't have the expertise internally. So, and we will not tomorrow, at least at Bell, do precision fermentation. It's not our core business. We will never do it. So just consider that the time we are spending to find the right startup is because we want to do a collaboration, and not to steal the idea, because we will never be able to do it, by the way. It's not our expertise.
Yeah, thank you. That's so important to remember as well, is there's a reason that people are looking for partnerships, right? And that makes me think of the actual implementation of the partnership. So what does it look like once you've decided to partner? How many times can I say partner? What does it look like to build that technology together, to look at the actual technical processes and iterate together? What is that process?
Yeah, if I can just jump in there. I mean, it's interesting. We talked about big commitments, making sure you're clear on the commitments and where you want to go and all those expectations, and assuming you've got the relationship right. Think big, start small, right? Make sure that both sides can engage with the same level of intensity. And I've seen, sometimes the large corporations bring a lot of resources and again can swamp the small company. At the same time, they can also underinvest. And then just aligning on speed, I think, is one of the biggest challenges I've seen. Sometimes, it's often said, startups can move much faster than a large organization. Actually, when a large organization gets its act together and puts a small dedicated team in place, they can move very, very quickly. And sometimes the startup is caught up in doing other things about running the business with a very small team. So, it starts small, but make sure you're clear on the speed at which you can actually execute, because you don't want to see a team that's been put in place in a large company that suddenly is stuttering because the startup can go at the speed of those dedicated resource. And I think just be open to pivot, right? Because we all know that things aren't always going to go right. This is innovation after all. You're going to be finding new ways in which things don't work. And as long as you're there for the course and you have open conversations as you go, you should be setting yourself up, improving your chances of success. Yeah.
I think each interaction is very different. I think, and the process that you go through is very different depending on what your need state is and what you're actually hoping to resolve. So I think that's what I would add. I mean, we're not a big corporation. Meatless Farm is still classed as a startup in many people's view. So we're not a big corporation. So I just, I would say everybody just come to us, because then you haven't got to deal with the big boys. Every interaction is very different. And I think, pace, agility, the speed that you go at are all determined by what you're trying to resolve or what the innovation brings.
And if I can jump, I like the idea of right timing on both sides, by the way, because sometimes corporates are screening the market, but without having secured the right team to accompany the startup just after. So in that case, we have an issue. But it can happen as well from the startup side. I've met plenty of startups who would like to meet Bell. We had plenty of meetings. And 1 year later, they are still saying to me, yes, I promise, Caroline, in the next month, I'll come back to you. Meaning that when they contacted me, it was really too early stage for them. So on both sides, I think we need to think before contacting a startup, or a startup before contacting a corporate, and be sure it is the right timing for both of us.
And if I can add on that, I think for that, what is super important, and we go back to transparency, is really to identify the gaps that the startup has in terms of technology. It can be regulatory, it can be whatever, or marketing, but really from the beginning to identify what are the gaps and see if we can fulfill the gaps, if we can help. Because even if they have their proprietary technology, maybe the technology that we have can be complementary and we can create a new technology. So, but we have to be super clear on what are the gaps. And sometimes my feeling is that the startups, and I understand why, they give a little bit a super nice picture of what they have, because they have to sell their ideas, and I fully understand. But at one stage, we have to put everything on the table and say, okay, here we struggle, what can we do, and continue together. And for me, this is key. Again, transparency. And on our side, also not to promise the moon. If we cannot help them, we have to say, okay, no, sorry, we could not. It's impossible. Or to propose maybe something a little bit different, as Tim said, that maybe we should pivot a little bit, which is sometimes very difficult for startups to agree. So.
And by the way, Caroline, to your comment, and I will do it very briefly, we encourage startups to engage very early, before they're ready, because we preach to them that if you want to have a product that Bell Group like, talk to them before you finish the development make sure that what you're doing is what they want to see, because you can think that you know what they want, but you have no idea. Start talking before you're ready. Don't misrepresent. Don't say that you have it. Say that this is what you want to develop. Make sure it makes sense to your potential, collaborators, partners, and customers.
Completely aligned. As if the purpose of the meeting is clear, you are right to advise a startup in that way. I was speaking about the follow-up after the first or the second meeting. Just say, okay, let's wait. I still need 6 months to, to move up before coming back to you. It was my point.
Definitely. Thank you, everyone, for all your perspectives. And I hope that everyone can find some interesting connections and potential partnerships today and tomorrow with all that we've learned.
And thank you, Shannon. I will echo your thanks to the panel. What a wonderful discussion. We could have gone another hour, but I will let you all who are watching get into your technology hubs. We've got some fantastic roundtables planned, so please do get along to them. We're looking at functional ingredients for dairy, and we're looking at novel hybrid ingredients for plant-based meats. Really great sessions. So please do get into those rooms. Thank you once again for watching. Thanks to Shannon, our panelists, and goodbye.